Heather Palmer never wanted her family's name, only to escape it. But when a $2 million grant fueling her groundbreaking environmental research is traced back to Mosaic Fertilizers, her estranged father's empire, everything she's built threatens to collapse. In a world where power hides behind polished facades, Heather must confront the toxic legacy of her past and risk everything to expose the truth that could shatter her family and save the planet. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation, the kind that prickled Heather Palmer's skin like static. She stood behind the deep crimson curtain, peeking at the sea of professionals and scholars settling into their seats. Tonight was the night she'd be honored for her decades-long contribution to environmental chemistry and sustainable education. The University of Cambridge spared no effort in making the gala dazzling. But Heather's focus was narrow, her thoughts anchored not in the lights or laurels, but in what she'd learned earlier that day. A colleague had let it slip, unintentionally, that the $2 million grant funding the research she was being celebrated for came from Mosaic Fertilizers. Her heart had stilled in her chest. Mosaic Fertilizers. The name echoed with a bitter, unshakable familiarity. Her father's company. The same conglomerate whose name had been poison in her life since she was 19. The same industry giant she had spent years trying to distance herself from. Her parents, Robert and Eleanor Palmer, had built an empire on synthetic fertilizers, monopolized regions, and allegedly buried more environmental violations than anyone dared to count. And they had disowned her. She still remembered the moment, clear as crystal despite the passage of 18 years. She'd opened her acceptance letter to a modest community college. Not Oxford, not Cambridge, not even King's College. Her father had sneered, voice laced with condescension. "If you're going to settle for mediocrity, you won't do it on our dime." Her mother had remained silent, as always. So Heather had walked out with a single suitcase, a prepaid phone, and nothing but fire in her veins. She scrubbed bathrooms and waited tables, clawed her way through night school, and ultimately earned a scholarship to Oxford, then a doctoral fellowship in the United States. Every title, every accolade, every late-night breakthrough in the lab was a brick in the fortress she built around her resolve. But now it seemed her fortress had a crack. "Dr. Palmer?" The soft voice jolted her. A young assistant with a clipboard stood nearby, eyes wide with respect. "They're ready for your entrance." Heather nodded mechanically and stepped forward. Applause thundered. Flashbulbs burst like fireworks. She walked slowly to the podium, chin high, heart pounding. She spotted familiar faces from across the world, scientists she'd mentored, students she'd inspired, colleagues who had become comrades. But none of them knew the truth. She took a breath, adjusted the microphone, and began her speech. "I stand before you tonight deeply honored and equally humbled. Not because of the recognition, but because of what it represents. That change, no matter how small, can grow into a movement. That education, when made accessible, becomes revolution." A murmur of agreement rolled through the crowd. She continued, smoothly transitioning into a powerful anecdote about her early struggles with water purification techniques in underfunded African villages. But midway through her speech, her eyes snagged on a familiar silhouette near the back. It was Eleanor. Heather faltered for half a second, a blink, a weight shift. Barely noticeable to the audience, but monumental to her. Her mother's blonde-gray hair was pulled into a sleek bun. The tailored dress screamed wealth and authority. She clutched a program like a lifeline, her knuckles white. Heather's throat tightened, but she pressed on. "And finally, I dedicate this award to the educators who never gave up on me, and to those who still believe that where you come from should never define where you can go." Applause, a standing ovation, cameras clicking. But Heather felt suspended in time. She walked off stage, beelining for the hallway, needing air, needing space. "Heather." Her mother's voice stopped her cold. She turned slowly. "You're not welcome here." "I know." Eleanor's voice was softer than Heather remembered. "But I had to see you, to say something." Heather folded her arms, trying to hold the pieces of herself together. "Did you know?" she asked. "About the Mosaic grant?" Eleanor looked down. "Yes. The breath whooshed from Heather's lungs. Eleanor stepped forward. Your father donated anonymously. He thought it would make amends. Heather laughed bitterly. After almost 2 decades of silence, after cutting me off and acting like I was dead? He reads every paper you publish, Eleanor whispered. He watches every interview. He's proud of you. Proud? Heather's voice cracked. He was ashamed of me for not getting into Oxford the first time. He threw me out for not fitting his image of a prodigy. You proved him wrong, Eleanor said. In every way. Heather stared at her mother. You stood by and let it happen. Tears shimmered in Eleanor's eyes. I was weak. I regret it every day. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. A lifetime's worth of words unsaid. Wounds unhealed. I didn't need his money, Heather said finally. I still don't. I got here on my own. I know, Eleanor replied. That's why the donation was anonymous. But now that the truth's out, Heather turned away. It changes nothing. And yet it changed everything. That night, Heather sat alone in her apartment, the award gleaming under a desk lamp. She stared at it, then turned her gaze to a stack of grant proposals. Her phone buzzed, an email from an anonymous account. The subject line read, You need to know what Mosaic is doing in South America. Attached were documents, leakage reports, falsified water quality data, and satellite images. Heather felt the old fire awaken, not the kind fueled by bitterness, but by purpose. If Mosaic was still poisoning communities under the radar, she had a responsibility. Not just as a scientist, but as a daughter who could finally hold the mirror up to the empire that created her and nearly destroyed her. Heather Palmer didn't sleep that night. Her mind churned, caught in a vicious tide between past scars and present urgency. The documents sent from the anonymous account were spread across her dining table, satellite images marked in red, water tables contaminated far beyond regulatory limits, internal Mosaic memos hinting at cover-ups. It was damning. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of battle she had trained her entire life to fight. But it was also personal. Her fingers trembled as she picked up a photo of a river, the Araguaia in northern Brazil, once crystal clear, now a slurry of brown sludge. According to the leaked files, Mosaic Fertilizers had been dumping chemical byproducts from its agrochemical division into the river basin for the last 7 years. The local community had reported increased cancer rates, birth defects, and mass die-offs of fish. The Brazilian Environmental Agency had opened an investigation in 2020, but Mosaic had buried it using high-level influence and payouts. Heather's gut twisted. She opened her laptop and began composing a message to Rafael Almeida, an investigative journalist she had collaborated with years ago during a project on illegal mining in West Africa. Rafael was blunt, relentless, and had a keen sense for stories that mattered. If anyone could help her verify the evidence and navigate the political minefield, it was him. To Almeida, infravox.news.br. Subject, urgent. Mosaic, Brazil. Rafael, we haven't spoken in years, but I need your help. Attached are documents I received anonymously last night. They concern Mosaic Fertilizers and chemical dumping in the Araguaia region. I believe they are credible, and I believe people are dying. Please contact me. Heather Palmer. She hit send and exhaled for the first time in hours. By morning, Rafael had responded. From R. Almeida, infravox.news.br. Subject, Mosaic, Brazil. Heather, I've seen enough to know this is serious. My contact in Goiás has reported similar findings. Give me 48 hours to get boots on the ground. Do not go public yet. We need to verify everything first. Also, you might want to be careful. Mosaic doesn't play fair. The warning echoed louder than she expected. Be careful. That week, Heather received a package with no return address. Inside, a black USB drive, a handwritten note in Portuguese that translates to, "They watch everything. Trust no one inside." The USB drive contained encrypted folders, videos from hidden cameras, showing Mosaic executives in Brazil discussing payment schedules to local inspectors, footage of unreported chemical tankers leaving processing plants. At night, and audio recordings of board meetings where executives debated how much financial loss was worth risking legal exposure. She watched them all, heart pounding. Heather needed support, but trust came slowly. She reached out to Dr. Mira Anand, a longtime colleague and expert in environmental policy, and arranged a meeting at a private lab facility in London. Mira listened in silence, watching the footage with growing horror. Heather, if this is real, Mosaic is violating not just Brazilian law but international chemical treaties. Then we expose them, Heather said, her voice low and resolute. Mira shook her head. This won't be like publishing in Nature. You'll be going up against political figures, corporate lawyers, and private security firms. They will come after you. Let them, Heather replied. They'll learn what they made when they threw me out. As Mira began reaching out to international, environmental watchdogs and human rights organizations, Rafael sent updates from Brazil. He had visited Araguaia and confirmed everything. Interviews with families, doctors, and even former Mosaic employees. The stories matched the data, but then came the first hit. An anonymous article appeared in a UK tabloid. Green Queen Heather Palmer linked to corporate backroom deals, alleging that Heather had accepted donations from Mosaic while knowing their environmental record. It cited unnamed sources and doctored screenshots. Smear campaign, Rafael texted. Classic distraction tactic. Expect more. She closed her laptop and stared out the window of her flat. The Thames rolled gently under a pale moon. The award she had received just weeks ago now felt like a lead weight on her shelf. 2 days later, someone broke into her lab. No equipment was stolen, but her hard drives were missing, and someone had tried to access her secure server. Luckily, Heather had already backed up the files with Mira and uploaded encrypted copies to a secure cloud. That same night, she received a call. Heather. Her mother's voice. Heather stiffened. Why are you calling? Your father knows about the investigation. He wants to speak with you. No, please, he's not well, and he asked for you by name, just once. Hear him out. After what he did? After what he funded? Heather, he made mistakes, but he's still your father, and you might need him more than you think. Despite herself, Heather agreed to meet. The setting was private, a rented estate in the countryside, far from Mosaic offices, cameras, or corporate shadows. Robert Palmer looked older than she remembered, thinner, slower, but his eyes held the same steely sharpness. I suppose congratulations are in order, he said dryly. Heather said nothing. He leaned forward. I know about Brazil, and I know you want to burn it all down. Because you deserve to burn. He smiled sadly. I once thought empire was everything. That legacy mattered more than decency. You proved me wrong. She flinched at the rare admission. He continued. Mosaic won't stop. You need help from the inside. There are files I've kept hidden. Password-protected backups of reports that the board tried to erase. I can give them to you. Why? Because I'm dying, Heather, and I don't want my tombstone built on lies. She hesitated. Her instinct screamed not to trust him. One condition, he added, you take your mother out of this. Leave her untouched. She let it happen. She's paid every day since. That night, Heather received the files. True to his word, Robert had delivered damning proof. Internal audits, emails between board members, bribes, and suppressed toxicity data. With this, the case was airtight. She forwarded them to Rafael and Mira. We go public in 72 hours. As the countdown began, Heather stood at her window again, looking out at the Thames. The lights of London sparkled below. Her hands shook, not with fear, but with anticipation. The empire had fractured. The chill in the Cambridge night cut through Heather's apartment window like a shard of glass. She sat at her desk, the dim glow of her laptop casting harsh shadows across her face. The grainy footage from the university-linked consultant dumping toxic sludge haunted her mind. Every moment she lingered, the stakes grew heavier. This was no longer academic curiosity or family grudges. This was a battle for truth and justice. Morning brought no relief. Heather arrived early at the university lab, the sterile corridors whispering beneath her footsteps. She barely noticed the curious glances of colleagues. Most treated her with a mixture of respect and wary distance since the gala. Rumors buzzed like flies, some supportive, some openly hostile. Heather didn't care. Her priority was clear. Identify the collaborator inside Cambridge who had enabled Mosaic's crimes. She had one lead, the consultant in the video. A man named Lucas Fenwick, a junior researcher recently hired on a temporary contract. Heather had never met him personally, but with a few calls and deft inquiries, she pieced together his profile. Lucas was ambitious, hungry, and dangerously compliant. The problem was simple. Heather needed proof. The following evening, Heather found herself standing outside the darkened entrance of Fenwick's rented flat, clutching a worn leather folder with copies of her evidence. She hesitated, breath clouding the cold air. Her phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "Stop, or you'll regret it." Heather ignored it, steeling herself. The door creaked open, and Fenwick's startled face emerged. "I'm not here to threaten you," Heather said immediately. "But I need answers." Fenwick's eyes darted nervously. "You don't know what you're getting into. I know enough to know you're helping poison people." "Why?" His jaw tightened. "It's not just Mosaic. It's bigger. There are powerful interests involved. If I refuse, they'll ruin me." Heather's voice was cold, steady. "Help me stop this. Expose them. You can protect yourself." Fenwick's shoulders sagged, the fight draining from him. "All right, I'll cooperate, but we have to be careful." Back at the lab, Heather and Fenwick pored over internal emails and financial records Fenwick had smuggled out. Names of high-level executives, bribed officials, and falsified reports bloomed across the screen like a web of corruption. Among the documents, one signature stood out: Robert Palmer, her father. But now Heather understood something deeper. He had been playing a dangerous double game, funding research publicly while covertly supporting operations that destroyed ecosystems. Was it greed, pride, or was he trapped by his empire? Heather didn't know yet, but the truth demanded answers. One late night, Heather received a call from an unknown number. "Heather?" The voice was hesitant. It was her father. "I want to meet." She was silent for a heartbeat, then agreed. The meeting place was a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, far from the university's prying eyes. Robert Palmer looked older, wearier than she remembered, his eyes shadowed by decades of regret. "Why now?" Heather asked, voice tight. "I couldn't stop what was happening," he confessed. "The board, the investors, they forced my hand. I tried to push for reform, but the pressure was relentless." Heather's bitterness flared. "You funded my work, but destroyed everything I stand for?" "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I never wanted to lose you." Tears blurred her vision, but she held her ground. "Then help me finish this. Help me make it right." Together, Heather, Fenwick, and reluctantly, Robert Palmer began compiling a comprehensive report, evidence so damning it couldn't be ignored. They presented it first to the university's ethics board, which, after initial hesitation, agreed to back an independent investigation. But Mosaic's shadow was long. The company launched a vicious PR campaign, painting Heather as a disgruntled daughter seeking revenge. Threats escalated: emails, phone calls, even vandalism at her home. But Heather's resolve only hardened. The day the story broke, Heather stood before a room packed with journalists and scientists. She spoke clearly, passionately. "This is not just about one company. It's about corporate responsibility, environmental justice, and the courage to face inconvenient truths." Her voice cracked, but she did not falter. The revelations sparked outrage worldwide. Governments launched inquiries. Shareholders demanded change. Mosaic's executives were forced to resign. Months later, Heather walked through the recovered river valleys of South America, places where clean water had begun to return. She knew the battle wasn't over. But for the first time in years, she felt a fragile hope. Her mother called that day, voice trembling. "We're proud of you." Heather smiled softly, thinking of the shattered mirror finally mended, not by forgetting the cracks, but by facing them head on.